Old Man Sarge here. I haven't recorded for quite a while, but I'm trying to do some other things beyond just recording games. And today I'm at Lord of Chaos, his studio, and he is an expert painter. In fact, I've got another army of his that he offered to sell it to me, and I picked it up as soon as I could. And he's right into the Kings of War right now. He's been painting and rebasing many different things because he really enjoys the game. So I'm going to go and do an army showcase on a few of his armies. I'm going to do a pretty good detail on them, but we're going to just do a kind of a scan of the first army, and this one is the Undead. So it's at the very back of this book, but it's basically the Undead, and we're going to go over each unit, and we'll talk a little bit about the game as we're filming the actual units. So, without further ado, here is the army. This is the Undead Army by Lord of Chaos, if I got that right. And I'll just kind of get in here and let you see some of these units. Well, first of all, you see the scope of the army. And how big again was it?
4,520 points right now, without any upgrades.
4,520 points of Kings of War Undead. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of dioramic bases, and he really likes to do those. So you can see the wall in the background. You can see the crypt ghouls coming over the top of the crypts, and you can see the walls in the back with in the very back you can see he's got werewolves with a tree in the back there, ghouls, and then all of his leaders up front, his infantry-based leaders. And we've got back here, we've got a mounted knight, a werewolf leader. He told me that's the leader, and then there's a worm with a guy riding on top of it. We're going to go over and show these in more detail, so don't worry too much about the fact that I'm kind of scanning and skipping through these quickly right now, but we're just kind of showing some giant bone guys. Looks like they got blood all over their hands. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these units and tell you what the unit is consisting of, and talk a little bit about Kings of War while we're doing it. Chris, who's Lord of Chaos, he really enjoys the game of Kings of War.
It's because it's the best.
So we'll be right back with individual units. I'll do one last scan, slow scan, so you can just see the extent of this army. He's going to be playing this in a campaign that will start in a couple weeks and last until March. So that's kind of why I wanted to get this one on the channel first. Alright, so we're going to start doing each individual unit now, and I'll be right back with the first one. So this is a Skeleton Warrior regiment, correct?
Correct. So Kings of War allows you to do a thing in the game called PMC, or Preferred Model Count. So normally a regiment is 20 models, but using their rules for Preferred Model Count, you can do 75% of the unit strength. So in this case it's 15. I believe I have 15 skeletons on that base. As long as it looks full, so you can tell what the unit is. These are, of course, the slightly older Games Workshop skeletons. And the reason I chose to do an Undead Army first, this is the first army I did for Kings of War, was because I had two fully painted Age of Sigmar armies. One was the Legions on the Gash, and the other one was the Flesh Eater Courts.
Okay.
But in Kings of War, they're all just under the banner of Undead.
Nice. So you've got a road, it looks like a pathway?
Yeah. That's using modeling putty,
Okay.
like the two-part epoxy sculpt, I think, to be specific on this case. And then there's like corkboard on some of the bases to add some elevation, And then there's a bunch of Games Workshop terrain from like the I think it's the Garden of Moor kit. It's like the graveyard kit. I've collected a lot of Games Workshop stuff over the years, so I have a lot of this kind of stuff lying around here that went to really good use here with these bases.
Okay, my little stand here went around pretty quick, but I think everybody got a good picture of the entire scope of these particular models. This is a regiment, so we'll move on to the next size. Will be the bigger size, which is a horde. Okay, so this is a horde of skeleton warriors. They've got a on the right side. It looks like they have a fence, and yeah, they're all coming at us here. So there's the back of those guys.
So this whole army, when I was doing them for Age of Sigmar, was supposed to be like an undead Cities of Sigmar army.
Oh, nice.
And so like the banners and the colors are kind of reminiscent of the old Empire army from back in old Warhammer.
Oh, wonder. That's really a cool idea. I like that. All right, so we're going to move on to the next. So this is he's got 2 horde of skeletons and he's got 1 regiment of skeletons. So here's the 3rd unit of skeleton warriors. They got a blue standard that says Sigmar on it with a lightning bolt.
Strange. Almost like it's from a different game.
And they've got it looks like a ghost in the back coming out of the eyes.
Yeah, it's like out of part of a skeleton rising up there. Like I said, taking different bits and pieces from other models. That's from the Spirit Host kit. And it just adds more of that ambiance of like the creepy Undead Army for me.
I love the bases too with the grass.
It matches my playmat almost perfectly. We were commenting about that before we started filming. It's like, it just really works on the playmat I have.
Alright, so the next unit, the 4th unit, is another unit of skeletons, but this happens to be a unit of skeleton spearmen.
This is a unit I had to add to. I only had 20 spearmen painted up for Age of Sigmar, because, to be honest with you, Games Workshop, for some reason, has never really given spears like the right feel in a fantasy game, in my opinion. Like, in Age of Sigmar, they have a little bit further reach, but they suffer on the attack rolls. They're always one worse on the attack rolls. And in Kings of War, spears are awesome. Like, you get the phalanx rule, and they hinder cav horribly. Things that fly have a hard time against them. And that unit right there has been my MVP in so many games I've played lately. Just the humble skeleton spearmen. And I was saying to Ben Sarge, like, I just played a game against a regular opponent of mine here, and that unit fought in 4 combats in that game, and it actually flanked in 3 of the 4 it fought in. And skeletons aren't great in Kings of War. They're not that great, but when you hit on a flank, anything gets a lot better when you double your number of attacks. And a horde flanking is just terrifying. Even the mightiest things fall. They helped kill a Archfiend of the Abyss.
Wow.
In the last game.
So now they would be like your anvil, right? For your hammer and anvil type of situation.
Yep.
So
I've had one game where they failed me, and it's just because my opponent rolled spectacular, and in 2 turns of combat put 20-some wounds on them, which is above their leadership value. But and it was dice spiking on his part. But they've always been really reliable and consistent with me so far. So one of my favorite units.
all right, and that is his skeleton warriors with spears.
Yep.
I guess it would be skeleton spearmen.
Skeleton spearmen.
Technically. All right, this is a unit of revenants.
Mm-hmm.
And are revenants more or less the elites, kind of?
So
of skeletons?
For the
maybe?
undead, they're the elite. For any other army, they'd be considered the main line.
Okay, so they're just kind of normal.
And undead are not good in combat. So the way I look at it in Kings of War, like, you have different hit values of what you hit on, like either 3, 4, or 5, generally speaking, for most units. 4 is like your average normal troop, 3 is like your elite troop, 5 is like your undertrained green troops. Skeletons hit on 5s. Revenants hit on 4s. So compared to skeletons, they're really good. And I keep fooling myself into believing that they're better than they are, because I think of them as the elite troops. Mm-hmm. And then I play games with them, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys kind of suck, compared to what I think of as an elite troop. And so they tend to actually be a bit more of a anvil rather than a hammer unit. They can take the hit better. They have a defense of 5, which is really good in the game. And they have an extremely high nerve value, even for Horde. They have a 24 nerve, and they're fearless, so they have no lesser value. So they're really kind of a pain in the butt to break. And then all undead pretty much come with an ability called Life Leech that lets them heal when they inflict damage in hand-to-hand, and you can increase it in an Undead Army by 1, and then there's a magic item you can give called Han's Sanguinary Scripture that can increase by another 1. If you pile all that on a Revenant unit, they will just stay forever. And
I love how these guys are based there. You've got this, like, it looks like maybe a graveyard gate or something, and they're all just kind of pouring out of it. In fact, I think I'm going to stop it when I get to the back of this, just so you can see kind of what you would normally see if your face sees you see all these guys, the last of them or whatever are coming out of this gate. That's really cool.
I love the dioramic basis for that. King's of War just gives so many opportunities to have fun modeling your miniatures. So
you can be a lot more creative because you don't have to worry about.
You're not removing models, so you don't have to worry about. I used to do this back in Old Fantasy. I would make bases that would fit together or lock together certain ways, and you had to be so careful on your modeling, of how you positioned your miniatures. You had to be careful how you position them on the base itself. You had to number your bases and know what order everything went in.
Yeah, I remember Black Orcs.
Oh, such a pain! Such a pain, and I love how they do it. So,
okay, well these are the Revenants, and now we'll be moving on to what, ghouls next?
Oh, all the ghouls.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so now we've got 2 regiments of ghouls.
I don't use ghouls very often, which is funny because I have so many of them because I had a Flesh Eater Court army in Age of Sigmar, and then I pulled them over, but I had a ton of painted ghouls. I've always hated the Games Workshop ghoul models, to be honest. I thought they looked really dorky. And I came up with a color scheme that I think makes them look kind of menacing and takes away some of the dorkiness of the models and makes them look kind of like scary undead. And ghouls aren't true undead in this. Like they're not fearless, for instance. They can waver, unlike the other undead units. But these are kind of a good throwaway unit. They're kind of good to and having said that,
so what's the stat line on ghouls?
So as a regiment, they have 15 attacks, which is pretty good for a regiment. Most regiments usually have 12, so they have a few extra attacks. They hit on 4s, so they're, once again, better. They're not shambling, which is a plus and a minus in this army because it means they can move at the double, but it also means they're not affected by surge, which is a big part of playing an undead army, or can be. And they have wild charge and a speed of 6, so they actually can charge 13 to 15 inches in a turn. Which
so they might be good flankers or something.
It makes them a good threat. And I've had some luck with them. I haven't used them a whole lot, and I probably should use them more. I like a really aggressive style of play, and it lets me do that with the undead. But the times I've taken them as a throwaway unit, they usually live to the end of the battle and capture objectives. So my intent of them to use them as throwaway units usually doesn't actually happen. Much to the chagrin of my opponents, who are not happy that they're still alive. I mean, I take a lot of healing in my undead armies usually, and so people throw wounds on them, they waver them, I heal them back up to nothing, and they're just like, please just die.
So would these be cheaper units then?
Yes.
For point cost?
Not really, because your skeletons are still cheaper.
Okay.
But ghouls can hit pretty good. I said 15 attacks hitting on 4s is better than their skeleton equivalents.
Okay.
They are only defense 3 though. So they're paper thin, and anything that hits them with any amount of Thunderous Charge or Crushing Strength just is wounding you on 2s.
And skeletons have a defense of 4?
4, yeah.
Because they have shields and...
Right, they're rotted armor and shields.
And Revenants have a 5?
They have a 5.
Okay. Okay, so I can see how I know I've never played or played against them, so I can see how you might use these as flanking units. Use the hammer with the skeletons and stuff, and then maybe flank with these. But maybe there's better flankers. We'll find out later. So these are 2 regiments of ghouls. When it comes back around,
and if need
I'll
be,
stop it.
you can push 2 regiments together in a game and use them as a horde.
Okay.
So, not that I need another horde of ghouls.
All right, well, now that we're talking about your horde of ghouls, we'll move on to those next. All right, these are some of my favorites. I like the Revenants coming through the gate, but these guys climbing over the top of this, I don't know, what would you call a mausoleum? A crypt, right? They look so cool coming off there.
And the models didn't take any real positioning. It's just the basic form of the models and finding a good spot to glue them where it looked natural. But just that, I don't know, that to me seems horrifying. Like this is
it is.
This is like your fast zombie movie, right? Like these aren't zombies. I mean, they're the undead and they're very quick. and they're scuttling across you in this mass horde. And just like, yeah, like I wouldn't want to face that.
No,
That's the stuff of nightmares. Right
I think if I played you on the table, I would. Can I get off the other end of the table? Do I have? Okay, so I'm gonna show you the back of this. That's what I wanted to do, and I'm gonna actually stop on the back because it's just little details like this that get me. All right, so you're not normally gonna see this guy climbing up the back of this.
I mean, if I have my way, you are, because I'm going to be around behind you
right?
and hitting your units from behind, and you're going to see it cleanly.
Right. But normally, like at the beginning of the game, for example, you're not going to see that. But yet, there's one of the ghouls climbing up over the top of the crypt. I love it.
Those crypts take up a lot of space on the base, and so trying to hit that preferred model count still and fitting 30 models on there. When these are models, their arms kind of like splayed out to the sides and it makes them hard to like rank together.
I see you got some over the top of others and stuff.
Yeah, and you kind of have to do that to make them all fit. Once again, like I said, it's that scrambling horde. Like this isn't a military regiment, right? Like these aren't trained soldiers. This is a group of cannibals coming to rip you apart, and it makes it for. Like I said, I don't think the models themselves are that great. But I had them already, and they're already painted. I love the color scheme I have on them that makes them look kind of terrifying, with the blood around their mouths and their hands drenched in blood. So it adds to that. Yeah, these are creepy, not the kind of things you want to see in your backyard one night.
Yeah, I really like the way these look. I'd probably put them on the table just because of the way they look, even though they might not be your preferred models to play with.
I haven't used a horde of ghouls since my very first game of Kings of War, when we were just trying things out. And I was literally using cardboard movement trays that I'd cut out of a graham cracker box with just a handful of models on each one to signify what it was, just because we were just trying to learn the rules and try it.
Right.
And
that was a year ago.
Yeah, not quite.
Not even a year ago. So you really
10 months ago.
You really haven't been playing this game for a long time. You've been playing it for a year, and you've taken your artistic and your artistic stuff from Warhammer, and you've applied it to Kings of War.
Yep.
And I've seen a lot of battle reports and a lot of other people's stuff, but I haven't. I mean, I did see a couple armies that were interesting. I couldn't see them really close, but this is just a phenomenally well done, just artistic setup. I mean,
this is fun. The dioramic bases just give you so much freedom and the room to have fun. I've been trying to convert more of our local community into this game, and one of the other guys in our group was going off about how he loves the game, he loves the rules. He's only played one game, he's watched one game, played one game, and he doesn't live here anymore. He's here visiting for the holidays. But he said that the dioramic bases is his number one reason that he would switch over, is just the ability to play around artistically with it.
It's really cool. Okay, we'll move on to the last unit of ghouls. All right, so this is the last unit of ghouls. And again, it's a crypt. They're coming over the top and maybe coming out of it. But the other thing that I've noticed that I didn't really talk about, but I've actually seen it on a number of your bases, is it looks creepy. You got all the skulls. You got, the dark colors. You've got the ghouls just charging you. And then there's like a vine of roses.
Right, yeah.
It's just like, wait a minute. That doesn't really belong here, does it? Like the beauty of roses.
Well, it's a cemetery, though. So you gotta imagine that until the undead rose out of here, people were still caretaking it. And so having that splash of color, though, breaks up, too, because there's so much of that pale white flesh of all the ghouls. And so those bright colors contrast with it and really pop out. And
so the green grass and the red color. Well, they got red on their hands too.
Right, they do, and that's the thing that helps break up that color too. Otherwise, you just get a blob of white, and you don't want that. It's not going to be appealing to the eye at all.
So we'll show you the back of this again.
And I promise, not everything here is a Games Workshop model. I have some models in this army that are from some other companies too, but I was using mostly what I had at hand at the time.
I mean, look at these guys. They're climbing up the back of this crypt, coming over the top. Yeah, this is like watching one of those Return of the Living Dead or whatever, and you're just like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go hide in some.
Wait till I get my zombies. I have a bunch of old GW zombies and a couple of corpse carts, and I just finished making the bases. I have one of the bases painted for a legion, which is even bigger than a horde. And
wow,
I'm
how big now?
So that's supposed to be 60 models normally, so 45 on the preferred model count. I'm not going to be able to fit that many because I have the base pretty cluttered with terrain.
Okay.
So I'm using about 30 zombies on those when I do them. But I'm also doing the corpse card, which is pulled by zombies, has a bunch of like bodies on the card itself that are being raised as more zombies,
right?
And then the guy in the back like leading them, like a mini necromancer leading them in the battle.
So this is how wide is this base? 100 millimeters?
200.
This is 200 millimeters.
By 80, and then
the horde will be how?
Be 200.
Or the Legion will be how big?
200 by 120. It's deeper. It's like 2 ranks deeper.
Okay, well it'll still fit on my little thing to show people.
Yeah, you'll still be able to showcase it when I get them done. I mean, I got to paint.
I know you got a lot on your plate.
I barely just started it, and I'm working on several armies and a couple different game systems right now. So.
Now this is phenomenal. I'm really impressed with how these look, and this is another horde of ghouls. So, and what are we going to move on to next?
We're going through the book in order. So Wraiths are the next unit.
Okay. All right. So we got a unit of Wraiths.
Now, this
is a regiment of Wraiths.
This is a regiment. Okay. So a little background real quick. I used to be the Games Workshop fanboy.
Okay.
Utterly and completely GWs all the way. And then earlier this year I kind of broke out of that, and I've been breaking out of it more and more and more. And this is kind of a good example of one of the things I dislike about Games Workshop models.
Okay.
Now, I love the models, right? Like the models themselves, the aesthetic, the flow of them, it's great. They're gorgeous models. They're fun to paint.
Right.
They're effing huge. They're just so big.
Well, isn't that kind of... haven't we kind of seen that where the game starts out with smaller, and then because of the competition, they become... Instead of 28 millimeter, now they're like 32.
32
I've heard.
heroic scale.
Yeah, so like they're not realistic sized anymore.
Accurate, but I mean, I know they are heroic scale. I know they don't feel like they're 28 anymore. I mean, when I started painting models, everything was 25 millimeter.
Okay.
And then everything went to 28, and then everything's been creeping up to 32.
Everybody wants it bigger.
Yeah, and I mean, as my eyes get worse as I get older, I don't complain too much about that.
Right.
But you can't. There's no way I'm fitting 15 models on that base because they're just too big, and they're not built to rank and file anymore because they're for Age of Sigmar.
Right.
And so they don't really care about that. In fact, part of me thinks Games Workshop does it intentionally so that you can't really use their models easily with other companies' games, which is funny because their stated purpose is that they're a model company and not a game company, despite their name.
Right.
And yet, they don't want their models being used other places. They want everything to be so in-house. And that's as negative as I'm going to try to get about Games Workshop today. I can get really negative about them if I let myself. But
yeah.
They make beautiful models still. They make great worlds. I'm just not a big fan of their games anymore. Kings of War checks all the boxes as a game for me. And I'm really looking forward to doing some of Mantic's armies, because Mantic's models have come up a long way over the years. And their newer stuff. I just picked up the Halflane army. I just picked up the Reforged Orcs.
So do we have any Mantic for Undead or no?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All this was stuff I had left over from Games Workshop, and then a couple things I added or traded from other people, plus a couple other things from other game companies. So,
okay.
But this was stuff I mostly had already.
Sure. I mean, you've already got 4,000 points. How much bigger do you need to go?
Oh, quite a bit.
So so let me ask you this. Okay, so a typical game is how many points?
Okay,
Kings of
so
War?
our group of friends have been playing 1,500 points, which is a little small by Mantic's model.
Okay.
They say 2,000 is the standard game, and a lot of tournaments in the U.S., like Masters and stuff, tend to be 2,300.
Okay.
The campaign we're going to be doing is 2,000, and we've been working our way. We did 1,500 to try to get new people in, and because we're all new to it, and a lot of people don't have full armies yet, and so it was a way for them to play games and feel like they were fielding full armies. And now we're moving up to 2,000 and trying to get the local community to follow suit.
Okay.
But 2,000 is pretty normal. I like to have more because I like to have variety in what I put on the table, so I have options.
Sure.
If I want to play a ghoul-heavy army, I can play a ghoul-heavy army. If I want to play the Revenant and Skeleton Horde, I can do that. It just depends on what my mood is for playing. And I've played Undead a bunch of different ways.
Okay. Well, I have some additional questions, but I want to get another unit before I ask some more from you. Hold on. Okay, so now we're talking about a unit that's something that I haven't heard of before. It's called a Soul Reaver.
Soul Reaver Infantry. They are vampires. It's a unit of vampires on the board.
A unit of vampires. Okay, these are not Warhammer models.
That is an elite unit. Let me say that. That is a for real elite unit. They're melee 3, defense 5. They have crushing strength 2, which means they just hit like trucks.
Okay.
They have 25 attacks, which is more than double that of a normal regiment.
And this is just a regiment?
Yeah. They don't have a horde version. The regiment's as big as they get, but they have as many attacks as a normal horde.
Because vampires don't travel in hordes.
Right. These models are not Games Workshop. These models are from Cool Mini or Not. They're from the Revenant Kings game, which is now a dead game, I believe. Really unfortunate because it was a really fun game back in the day. These are House Garitzi models.
Wow, they look, I mean, honestly, they look really cool for your game. So I see a couple of them that are kind of curtsying with their cloak or their dress or whatever. Yep. That it just looks
the models
looks really cool.
I backed the Kickstarter when this game came out, and I love the models. In fact,
now are these actually vampires?
Yeah.
Even that game, they're vampires.
Yes, they are vampires in that game. I have a bunch of Wrath of Kings models left over, and I'm probably going to do a Trident Realms army down the road using some of their House Hadros, they were called, models. But anyway, I didn't have these when I started my Undead project. I ended up picking them up online. You can get them pretty cheap because the game's gone for the most part, and it's not like a sought after by collectors kind of thing. So you can find hobby shops that are holding on to old inventory and letting them go pretty cheap.
Well, wow. I mean, for Kings of War, I don't know if they do have vampire models?
I believe so.
But these look crazy good.
I love them. They're beautiful models, and they're in the same heraldry. So the heraldry of my army is this blue and red that you're going to see repeated on a bunch of different models. And a lot of times it's split. Like some units only have red, some units only have blue, but the nobility can wear both.
Okay.
And
they're nobles.
Yeah, vampires are nobles.
Okay. All right. And so we'll I just love looking at these. Okay, so we'll be moving on to what next?
The next thing I have is a unit of Revenant Cav.
Okay, Revenant Cav. So this is Revenant Cav.
Yep.
But you were just mentioning something about the vampires for cost.
They're so expensive point-wise.
So you said you could buy 2 units of skeletons for one.
I could almost buy 2 hordes of skeleton warriors for the 1 regiment of vampires. So Revenant Cav, I have really mixed feelings about these guys. Okay, one, I love the miniatures. I think they look great.
Yeah.
Old paint job for me, but they were a lot of fun to do back in the day. I was speed painting an Undead Army, Legion of the Gash Army back in the day, or Nagash, however it's said here. In the States, we say everything wrong, so.
Right.
But this is a regiment of knights. I keep taking them, and I keep expecting good things of them, and they keep letting me down.
Now, why is that?
I don't know.
What is their stat line like?
So they're speed 8, which is really good because undead are generally pretty slow.
Okay.
They still shamble, but with, that's a 16-inch charge without anything special going into them.
Okay.
They have Thunderous Charge, too. So on the charge, they hit, just with unbelievable force. They have 16 attacks, but they hit on 4s because, once again...
They're skeletons.
They're revenants. They're better than skeletons, but they're average. And if they don't break the unit on the charge and get into a good position, on the counter charge, you're just going to get beat up.
Now, are they good flankers? Or,
they are good flankers.
Or are they too expensive?
They just went up in points, too, which has me shaking my head because I don't understand why people think they're so good. And
okay.
I haven't had good luck with them, and maybe I'm just misusing them. And I've tried them on the flanks. I've tried them in the center.
Okay.
I've used them in different roles in the game, and I haven't, for me, they don't fit a good niche. There's other things I'd rather take that are similar points.
Okay. This is a regiment.
Yes. Now, having said that, I'm preparing to paint a second regiment of them because I have the models, and
sure.
I'm preparing to paint a troop of them because I have the models.
Troops are what?
Troop is only it'd be 5
guys,
so 4 on the preferred model count.
Okay.
And I have 12 of these guys floating around right now, so I have the models to do it.
Sure.
And maybe if I take a more Cav centric army using them, maybe they'll work better. Maybe it's because I only have 1 unit of them, it's not as good. Or maybe I put 2 regiments together in a horde. They can actually go as a horde, and maybe that's where their true strength is. I don't know. That big of hordes just get kind of unwieldy to use on the table.
Did they come with that standard?
Yep.
So that standard has a little bit of a rise with the crown and
yes. Yep. So it gives you something
I like it.
to paint.
I like it. And the next unit we're going to look at?
We're going to do the werewolves next.
All right.
I don't have...
Okay, so you had the Skeleton Reaver Cav.
The Revenant Cav.
Revenant Cav.
The Soul Reaver Cav I don't have yet. I picked
okay.
up 1 box of GW's new Blood Knights, and they're
okay.
gorgeous plastic models. I need 1 more box of them so I can put 8 of them on a base to count as a regiment.
Okay.
And they're basically the same stat line as the Soul Reaver infantry, except they actually have less attacks. And they break their crushing strength up into 1 of that and 1 thunderous charge. So they actually seem a little bit worse to me, except they're speed 8. And they're not shambling, so they have a lot of good mobility.
So what about points?
They're the same exact point cost as the regiment of vampires.
Oh, okay.
So
I got you.
I think I'll try them out and see. I try to do different themed armies, so that might be a theme is like more vampiric army. But these are werewolves that we're looking at right now.
Yes.
And these are also from the Wrath of Kings Goritsi line from Cool Mini.
They just look natural in your army, honestly.
I think they look great. The tree is a Games Workshop model. It's from the old Games Workshop tree kit.
Mm-hmm.
Just left all the leaves off to have the dead graveyard tree there and have a little more menace to it. But I love the miniatures. Werewolves, this unit is crazy fast. They're speed 9.
Okay.
So this is a flanking unit. They also are melee 3 and defense 5. And so they do a little bit of everything. They're a typical horde, in my opinion, that they have 18 attacks. They have good leadership, 15, 17, which is pretty normal for a large infantry horde. They're basically really fast ogres in terms of stat line.
And what's their defense?
Defense 5.
Okay, wow, you got some good defensive.
They got crushing strength 1. They got life leech like most undead, so they heal when they do damage 1 point. And then the most important thing to me is they have nimble, and so they get those extra turns. And these guys are a threat to any flank.
All right, I just want to point something out. So I think Little Red Riding Hood got bit, and she's a werewolf.
Yes, Little Red Riding Hood does lead that unit.
Because I see her at the very front with her hood on still, and yeah.
Yep, love their models. A lot of character in their models. I fell in love with the game when the Kickstarter was going because of the models, and they had world class painters doing the test paints to showcase them. And but their miniatures are fun to paint. They are that weird, people call it plastic, like plastique or whatever. It's like a resin plastic mix almost. Privateer Press uses it a lot too. And I don't like the material necessarily, and the models are kind of soft compared to like a hard plastic. But once again, fun to paint. The soft plastic has saved that spear on more than one occasion when it's snagged on something.
Okay.
Because it bends rather than breaks.
Yeah, that's probably better, huh?
But once again, really, really fun models. Fun unit. I've had really good luck with it. It usually dies because I'm so aggressive with it. I like throw it way ahead of my army to like go hit flanks.
Yeah.
But man, it gets out there and starts killing like missile units, like starts killing archer units before they get a chance to inflict much damage on me.
Oh wow.
And if I can get around the sides with it, people are just terrified because of that nimble. Once again, speed 9 and nimble is just crazy fast and maneuverable.
And they don't have shambling.
They do not have shambling, so
okay.
I don't get to use Surge on them, but they're usually so far ahead of my army. The one thing that they suffer from is a lack of inspiring because they usually get ahead. So there's a magic item you can give a unit that gives them inspiring self.
Right.
Or, as we'll show in a little bit here, there is a werewolf character who can travel with them and inspires them.
Okay. All right, so that's the werewolf unit.
Yep.
What's the next unit?
Zombie trolls.
All right, we'll be right back with zombie trolls. These are zombie trolls. They look like just giant ghouls.
Yes, that's because that's what they are from the Games Workshop line. But size-wise, and they actually kind of resemble the Mantic trolls. So I really like them for this role, but I use them as zombie trolls. They're kind of what I expect from the unit. They're speed 6, which is, that's pretty typical for that size model. Melee 4, which for undead is good. Defense 5 once again, so they're kind of a hard one to kill. And they're fearless 17, so they're hard to break. 18 attacks. They have crushing strength too, so when they hit really hard. And they have a little bit of life leech, and they are shambling like many things in the Undead Army. I've used them a couple times to pretty good effect. Once again, they tend to be a unit I throw away because they're a little bit extra speed. They tend to get ahead of the rest of my force. But if they can hit a unit and I roll halfway decent, they usually kill what they hit if I plan my attack well. And I've caused that to like make faster opponents stumble on their line with me if I suddenly this missile shoots out ahead of my army.
So you kind of maybe put your opponent on the back foot with them.
I think Kings of War is a lot about stealing the initiative from your opponent
or
and disrupting their battle line.
Yeah, disrupting their plans or whatever. Yep. They're planning for you to just kind of move forward slowly, and then you do something unexpected. And this is a unit to do it with. Yeah, and because they're defense 5, you have to hit them with something strong. And because they're fearless 17, you got to hit them with enough to do enough damage to be sure you're going to kill them. Especially if I get out of inspiring range. And so I've watched Cav armies collapse on themselves dealing with these, hitting them, and trying to struggle and recover their battle lines. And if you give me a turn or two where your battle line's in disarray, I'm an experienced enough rank and file player, I'm going to try to take advantage of that. So would you say that you take this unit more often than not?
No, I've just started experimenting with them. They're usually my replacement for the Revenant Cav.
Okay.
They're a little bit slower, but a little bit harder hitting.
And do they shamble?
They do shamble.
Okay. Of course they probably do. They're undead. Although, yeah, but the ghouls are not.
Stat-wise, though, they're really identical to the Revenant Cav. They're 2 speed slower, but 2 attacks more. And rather than having Thunderous 2, they have Crushing Strength 2. So their damage output is way more consistent because you lose Thunderous if you're disordered, which you get if you're hurt in melee. So if my Cav get bogged down, they become very weak very quick, where these guys never lose their strength.
They don't lose their Thunderous.
Yeah, because they have Crushing Strength. Yep.
Okay. All right, and the next unit will be?
Is a Regiment of Whites.
Okay. A unit of Whites is 2.
Yep. So a regiment of the big guys is supposed to be 3.
Okay.
And
they're gigantic.
But the preferred model count once again lets you get away with 2, and I did because these models are so big. I would be really hard pressed to fit a third one on that base.
Yeah, I don't know that you could.
And I also dislike the fact of how, I guess the word I've used recently is fiddly they are. Like, they're really frail and fragile feeling models. So I really try to pick them up either by the scenery piece in the middle or by the edges of the base.
Yeah.
And that is a thing that, like, these guys came out at the very end, during the end times of old Warhammer, but like a lot of the newer Games Workshop Age of Sigmar models, especially like the flying guys for Stormcast Eternals and stuff, feel the same way, where they have these very small contact points on the base, and they're held up by ribbons or streams of energy.
And they do that to make them look like they're floating or flying.
Right, and they look great.
Or
like,
whatever.
Beautiful models, and I have more I plan on adding to my army at some point. I've never used these guys on the table yet, though.
Okay.
So I need to find a place for them. Because they're so small of a unit, they don't have that many attacks, and they're a little lower leadership, but they're also a little cheaper points, but they're still 155 points, which for Undead is really expensive.
Okay.
That's pushing to a horde of skeletons.
And what kind of, like, defense and attack?
They're defense 5, they're melee 3, so they hit really good, and they're speed 7 with flying. And the flying is really... They're brutal, and they have crushing strength, too, so they do hit kind of hard, if you can flank them. They only have 9 attacks. So they're good at taking out small units, they're good at taking out war machines, they're good at taking out characters.
With flying, correct me if I'm wrong, but with flying, you can go right over the top of your own army or your opponent's army.
They're height 3, which means they're the same height as Cav, so they can see over the heads of infantry to be able to declare those charges at things that are trying to hide behind infantry units.
So let me ask you this also, is something I've been thinking about. You have 4,000 points.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about playing a 4,000 point game?
No.
4,000 on each side?
No.
So would that scale well for Kings of War, do you think, or not?
Having not played it, I can't say for sure. I think, in my opinion, you'd have to get a bigger table for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kings of War probably scales pretty good to about 3,000.
Okay.
I think beyond that...
Does it get cumbersome, do you think?
I think it would. Or I think you need to go to multiplayer at that point.
Okay.
I think 4,000 with like 2 people each playing 2,000 would be a lot of fun. But I think once again you need a bigger table still.
So there used to be a game that we played called War Machine in Hordes. And it was a good skirmish game, but then it didn't scale well because it was just so in I guess, I don't know how to say it, the rule set was pretty difficult, like per unit rule set.
They had I can't remember what it was called, but they had a rule set for playing bigger games where you would go back and forth. It was a multiplayer format, so many players per side, and you'd have like different detachments that would go at a time. And
but they had to make a separate set of rules.
But it was a separate set of rules. And I mean, Games Workshop's done the same thing with Warhammer 40k with Apocalypse.
So would Age of Sigmar scale well, do you think?
I mean, I don't think Age of Sigmar is a good game to begin with. So,
okay.
And having said that, I've played all 3 editions of Age of Sigmar, so I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, it's dumb, but they've never played it. Like, I've played all 3 editions many times, and
You don't like the double turn.
I don't like the double turn. I've never liked the double turn. It's a thing I wish they would fix, but they've expressed that it's a thing that is there to stay.
Okay.
I don't think it's a very well balanced game either. I don't think the armies are very well balanced at all.
Right. But isn't that kind of what happens with either 40k or Age of Sigmar is it gets out of balance really fast, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I think it does. When they do whenever they do a full edition reboot, and they kind of like redo all the codexes at the same time or put out rules to play all the armies at the same time, the game always feels a lot more balanced. But Games Workshop is infamous for its codex creep in any game system they put out, and I don't know, it holds really true. I've played some of the 3rd edition of Age of Sigmar, and it's what convinced me to stop giving it a shot. The game is too complex. There's too many things to keep track of. When I say complex, I mean like the basic rules are really simple, but they've added so many extra layers on top that you feel like, me personally, I feel like I have to keep a ledger at the side of the table of all these various things that are going on, of tracking like victory conditions and whatnot.
Right.
And when I play a game, I just want to play a game. Like I want to have fun. I want the game to go smooth. I don't want to have to reference the book over and over and over again. And I feel like in any Games Workshop game, I have to do that. Where in every Mantic game I've played, and I've played Dead Zone, I've played Kings of War a whole bunch, and I've played some Firefight. I feel like even the first time I played those games, I don't reference the book a whole time. The rules are written really concisely.
They could be they can be for a casual gamer.
Absolutely.
They could be with somebody who's.
But they're written for tournament play still. Like they're written to be balanced and.
Well, but so I think War Machine and Warhammer 40K and Age of Sigmar, they were written for the tournament scene, but they don't seem to be very good casual games right now.
I think they started off as a casual game that became a tournament game over editions, and I think they're struggling with their identity somewhere in the middle still.
Yeah, but you're saying Kings of War, they're able to do a tournament, but yet a game that seems to be pretty intuitive and pretty much a casual type game.
Our group is fairly casual. We don't use chess clocks. We don't do any of that stuff like Kings of War that you see some of the groups do, and I know the big tournaments use that a lot. We're playing it to have fun still. And but the rules are set for it. I mean, the last game I played, I think we looked up one rule in a 7-turn game. And I'm just saying, like, every time I've played Age of Sigmar, and I'm one of the guys that I study the rules. I want to know the rules inside and out so I know what my army can and can't do. I want to know what my opponent's army can and can't do. And I just feel like when I'm playing a Games Workshop game lately, I'm spending almost half the time with my nose in a rule book looking something up. Either stats or rules, and usually special rules. And I love the layout that Mantic does with their books. I love the fact that all the special rules for all the armies are in one place.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there's no codex creep.
Yeah, I think they update everything at the same time.
They do. So.
All right. What will the next unit be?
We're going to do a pair of monsters. They're Gorblites, which is the only monster in the Undead Army.
Okay. I was looking at these initially, and I thought, oh, these are the trolls, but no, their heads are different.
They're a little different. They're characters from the Flesh Eater Courts.
Okay.
But they're the same chassis basically as the zombie trolls, which is great because the Gorblite, which they represent, also has the zombie keyword.
Oh, nice.
And they're the same size. The Gorblite is a little more zombie/Frankenstein monster, like stitched together from all these different monster parts in the Mantic line. Once again, I had these models laying around. They're already painted. I wanted to give a use to them, so I use these as my Gorblites. I have just started fielding the pair of them in an army together, and I usually use them on like one on either flank. And oh man!
They're not characters, these are monsters.
These are monsters.
Okay.
Do they give my opponent some problems? They have a rule called Cloak of Death, which is at the end of the movement phase, any enemy units within 6 inches take a point of automatic damage.
Wow.
And when you can throw them into like your opponent's flank, because a lot of people like will use, flanking units tend to be a little more fragile sometimes, and just getting free damage out there, or even if it's not, like people either use like really fragile, fast units to be flanking units, or they throw like a monster that usually has like high defense. And so anything that can get those extra wounds on, especially high defense, I just see as a really nice thing. And even though they die sometimes, they get the job done usually. And I've had really good luck with them. And I say luck, like I've had some surge rolls that have just put them in the perfect spots sometimes. And I've watched one of them surge into the rear of a unit one game, and let me tell you, that was the end of that unit. It was a unit of Cav, and a Regiment of Cav from Kingdoms of Men. And you get hit in the rear, triple attacks on one of those. They have D6 plus 6 attacks. Nice. And so you're looking at a minimum of 21 attacks. Wow. And they hit on 4s, and they're crushing strength 2.
And their defense is?
Defense 5.
Geez, there's a lot of units that have defense 5.
Nerf 17, I mean, Fearless, so they're good. That Crush 2 and then that Cloak of Death. I mean, and like if you throw them into if you can get them into the middle of somebody with like a bunch of characters around, you start watching all those characters, you start just piling damage on all these characters and stuff. Oh, your opponents just kind of freak out about them. So they're pretty scary. They've been a lot of fun, and they've been really good for me so far.
Okay, so the rule set for these guys is good. It sounds like
I love them. I actually when we started playing, everybody would take everybody played Hordes and everybody played Titans, right? Like everyone wanted the big stuff. And we're learning that there's a lot of strength in regiment-sized things because Hordes have a lot of power, have a lot of hitting power, but they can get hit by a lot more units. And they're less maneuverable because of that wide frontage.
Right.
And so I've watched our local meta kind of shift. Because we're all new, like we've all been playing this less than a year. As people have experimented with different things, and I've been one of the ones who've been kind of like moving away from hordes and into regiments, and then I moved away from titans and went down to monsters with these guys, and now people are starting to second guess they're taking titans all the time. So we'll see what our meta turns into here.
All right, and the next unit?
We're going to go into characters next. We got a bunch of heroes to go through.
Okay, did we miss any units that...
No, everything we've done so far has been...
So you have almost all the units except for the...
So the ones we've missed in the game, I don't have any zombies yet, but I'm working on 2 legions of those.
Okay.
I don't have any skeleton archers.
Okay.
Sorry, I skipped mummies. I don't have any mummies yet.
Okay.
I own the models. I had a tray made up for them. I got to get to them. I have Mantic. That's my first unit of Mantic stuff for my
Nice.
army, is I have their mummies. I have no plans of adding Death Pact to my army. I am absolutely adding Soul Reaver Cav. And then I don't have any Balefire Catapults. I'm not really... I'm kind of that classic undead player. I don't really want shooting in my undead army.
Right.
Archers and catapults just don't feel right to me. So I'm not going to include any of those at this point. I have 3 elf armies. I have elves, Sylvan Kin, and Twilight Kin. I got shooting covered elsewhere.
Right.
My undead are about the shambling horde.
Okay. So we'll move on to characters, and the first character that we're going to talk about is...
the Ghoulghast.
Ghoulghast. We'll be right back with the Ghoulghast. All right, so we got a Ghoulghast here, and I'm gonna scroll or move in just a little bit here.
I've never used him.
Never have used him.
Cool miniature. I think he's actually a vampire from the GW line as a character. But I'm using him as a Ghoulghast in this just because it's a cool looking model and I wanted to have it see the table. I never used it because up until this recent Clash of Kings, it had inspiring cannibal only, so it only inspired ghouls.
Okay.
And now they took that away. Anything other than self that in parentheses after inspiring has gone away. So now it's just inspiring. Now it inspires all my undead.
So you might take it now.
I think I would consider taking it now. It's actually a pretty good unit. Like, it's only defense 4, but it hits on 3s. It's a great hero. 6 attacks, which is pretty darn good for a hero. And it's crushing 1, which is pretty normal. But it has life leech 2, so it heals pretty good. And it has wild charge D3, so it keeps up with my ghouls. So I think it'd be a good flanking character on foot.
Okay, I'm going to soften the light a little bit. I'll be right back.
He's probably...
All right, I don't know if that helped any. He's just a little bit white on the top of his head, and it kind of is like me. I don't have any hair on the top of my head, so it shines right off. Okay, so we talked about the ghoul. Who's next?
Next is the Lycanus.
All right, now we know who bit Little Red Riding Hood and turned her into a werewolf.
That's right. So this guy also became better because he lost the inspiring lycanthrope only and became just plain inspiring. He's also speed 9 on foot, with a melee of 3, a defense of 5, and 5 attacks. But importantly, he's not an individual. So if he does flank or hit a rear, he gets to double or triple his number of attacks. So those 5 go to 10 or 15, and with that speed of 9 and nimble, he's really a scary force to shield a flank with. Haven't used him yet in a game, but I have plans to with the Clash of Kings update.
But you've used the werewolves?
I have used the werewolves.
But you haven't used their leader yet?
I haven't used that guy yet.
Okay, but he could keep up with them.
He absolutely can.
But
and I think he'd be good for like ghouls and cav too, because he's so fast he can keep up with them on foot.
Okay.
But he's small enough to hide still, and just that, like I said, being nimble, and I think he's a pretty big threat to a flank.
And he's from your, what line of models again?
Once again, he's from the Wrath of Kings game.
Wrath of Kings.
From Kumani or not.
Okay, well, he's fitting for that werewolf. He looks really good.
I like him.
Okay, and the next model will be...
We're going to go to a vampire. We'll probably put 2 together because they're both vampires. One's a named character, and one is just a normal vampire.
Okay. All right. We have a pair of vampires. We have a lady vampire who looks kind of like a...
Lady Alona. She's a named character, a unique unit from the game.
Okay.
And then a vampire lord. And I've taken him a couple of times. I have yet to field her because she is by herself 280 points.
Oh my word. Why so expensive?
I don't... Well, because she's amazing.
Okay.
The only thing more expensive in the list is the vampire lord on a dragon.
Okay, which we'll get to.
Yep, I have one of those too. She is speed 7, which makes her 1 better than a normal vampire. Hits on 3s, defense 6,
Oh, there's not too many
which
models.
is one better than the normal vampire. And she has a special rule called the Promise of Love Eternal. She's a romantic at heart.
Right.
And enemy heroes attacking her get -1 to hit in melee.
-1, and they need 6s.
And they need 6s on her defense, unless they have something.
And the crushing or something like that.
She is crushing strength 3.
Oh my gosh.
3!
She is a brute.
And she also has a rule called Duelist, which means when she's fighting individuals, she doubles her already impressive 8 attacks.
What does that mean? Like,
she doubles it. She goes from 8 to 16 if you're an individual.
oh my word.
So she is a character killer.
And the model looks like that because she's got 2 weapons, 2 rapiers.
Oh,
it
yeah,
looks like.
She's terrifying. She also has Inspiring, Life Leech too, as all vampires do. She's also Mighty, which makes her a little more of a thorn than a normal individual model. And she has spells, because why not? If you're already this cool, you may as well have Enthrall, so she can make units come closer, which you can use to break people out of formation. She has a little bit of heal, a little bit of lightning bolt, and a little bit of surge.
You're going to have to try her out.
I have plans on playing her. I almost want to wait till we go above 2,000 points to put her in a list, though. Because she's already 280. I could take a 2,000-point army and just drop her in there and
Right.
20 points of upgrades.
Well, but she could. It sounds like she could hit a horde unit by herself, and
Not a horde. She only has 8 attacks. If you're an individual, she doubles her attack.
no, I know, but I mean, if they're at -1 to hit her, and
Only heroes get that.
oh, okay,
So, yeah,
so
she's
she's
a character
looking
killer.
for heroes
She's a character
specifically.
killer, yeah.
Okay.
And so are normal vampires. So normal vampires have 7 attacks, and they're also duelist. And they have Crush too. So I have used him. I played against the Kingdom of the Man army, and he went through and just systematically killed every character on the board.
I just would.
Including an assassin. They had sent an assassin to try to take out my vampire, and my vampire got to the assassin first. And so the assassin will be joining my ranks later as a new
Right, right.
But yeah, he killed everything that he touched.
Now, okay, so now this base is interesting to me. Now, I mean, they both look like phenomenal character or models, and I'm assuming these are Warhammer.
Those
models?
are from Warhammer Underworlds. Those are
Underworlds, okay.
Those are some of the models that came from that.
Is the thing that he's got the statue?
Came with it. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, Games Workshop makes beautiful models. I will not contest that at all. I just wish they made better games.
So let's do a spin on these guys. I really do like. I might have to get. What is it called?
Underworlds.
Underworlds.
I forget the name of the warband. I have the other two.
Okay, so it's actually that game. I've got it. I don't have it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And are they fun in that game?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I bought these specifically to use in this. They came out after I'd already pretty much dropped Games Workshop games, but the models are gorgeous. And
I have never seen these models before, and I'm impressed.
I saw them and I'm like, these would make great vampire characters in another game. Hey, here they are.
They're really cool, and of course, your paint job makes them look really good.
Thank you.
Obviously,
They're fun. They're fun. We have some other fun characters here too from this line, some fun conversions. So
okay. So who's next?
we'll do some Revenant Kings next.
Revenant Kings. Okay, these are Revenant Kings, and I'm familiar with both of them, as they were around at the end of Fantasy.
Yep. Well, the guy with the two-handed axe, that's, I think Krell his name is. He was a named White
Right.
King back in that. He used to work for the Necromancer. I can't remember his name now. Was it Heimlich?
Yes.
Heimlich Kemmler or something
Yeah,
like that?
yep.
The Necromancer that was with Old Fantasy. But anyway, they're Revenant Kings in this. I usually field one Revenant King. I've been using the plastic one with the shield and the sword.
Okay.
Because it's plastic and not Finecast.
Right.
Not a big fan of Finecast personally. But he's like a lieutenant. Like he's not a great character in the game. Speed 5. Heroes are not shambling. I'll say that. So they can at the double. Melee 3. Defense 5, but only 3 attacks, which is pretty typical for like a hero in this game. And he tends to we joke as like wet noodle fight other heroes. They just kind of stand there and hit each other and don't do a lot.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe get 1 wound through a turn. And what's funny about him though is because he does have life leech. I've gotten into these wet noodle fights with other heroes, and I'm like I do a point of damage to them. Like, why do I do a point of damage back? I'm like, well, next turn I do a point of damage and heal your point of damage.
Right.
They're like, wait, I see where this is going.
Yeah, it's not going to turn out well.
And I've had other heroes run from him a lot, actually, because he has 14 nerve, and they're usually not doing 1 or 2 damage a turn, and then he's just coming right back up.
Right.
What I do, though, is I put Surge 5 on him, and it gives me a little extra maneuverability with my army.
So what is because I know that, like, you're talking about inspiring and, you know...
So inspiring...
What about undead? How does it work with undead? Is this the same?
So inspiring works the same. Inspiring, I think, is one of the most important rules in Kings of War.
Okay.
Because what it does is when somebody rolls to destroy one of your units, they roll what in Warhammer you call a leadership test. In this, it's called a nerve test. Where you roll 2d6, and in this you add the damage that's on the unit to it, and you're trying to hit at the top number of your nerve value if you have 2 numbers. If you're fearless, you only have 1 number. But if you can hit or exceed that top number, the unit is routed or destroyed and removed from the game.
Okay.
But if an inspiring model is within 6 inches, then that test gets re-rolled. So it's a chance to stay alive against that. And I've seen too many lucky rolls in the game where, like, somebody needs a 10 or better to destroy you, and they do it. And if you're like, man, if I had an inspiring guy there, he'd have to re-roll that, and the odds were he's not going to roll it again.
So that's why
it does happen, but
so you call this guy a wet noodle, but
he's there to hold the army together.
But so if he's behind a couple units, how many points is this guy?
He's only 80 points.
So he's not that expensive, and if he's behind a couple units,
right,
then your opponent's having to re-roll, or you're re-rolling.
And then I give him Surge for 10 points. He gets Surge 5, and it does give me a little extra. I'm telling you, Surge might be the best mechanic in an Undead Army.
I bet it is.
I have really been learning how to use it, and I'm not like a master of it. But I'll say this: I have not lost a game with my Undead here.
Oh wow!
Our local community.
Yeah.
I haven't played a ton. I'm maybe 10 to a dozen games in, but
sure.
And I've been winning with a greater margin every game lately, as I've been really fine tuning the army and figuring out how to play.
So,
but Surge is a big part of that.
So what are these guys called again?
Revenant Kings.
Revenant Kings, and then you had Revenants before.
Right, I have the Revenant Cavalry, and I have the Revenant Infantry as well.
Gotcha.
So,
I'm just trying to understand the themes that are kind of built into the game.
And in Age of Sigmar or Old Fantasy, they'd be called Graveguard, and these would be the White Kings for that.
Gotcha. So these are the Revenant Kings. What is the next unit?
The next one in the book we're going to go to is the Vampire Lord on the Undead Dragon.
Okay. All right, this is a classic model that we've seen for years. I don't know how long this thing's been out.
It's been out for a little bit. Yeah, it's the plastic. Thank you, Games Workshop, for this one. Vampire Lord on an Undead Dragon, or a Zombie Dragon as they call it in the Age of Sigmar world. But in this game, it's a Vampire Lord on Undead Dragon. I've used this guy a couple of times.
He looks like he'd be a beast.
It is, and this is what I talked about. Like, I stopped using Titans as much. What I really like about this model, though, is it's speed 10 and it flies, and it's not shambling. So that's a 20-inch charge with fly, and its height 6. You can see over everything. It makes it a tremendous threat. 10 attacks is nothing to to take lightly, and especially because it hits on 3s and has crushing strength 3. And so it does hit kind of like a train. It also has Inspiring, Life Leech, and Nimble. And it has Icy Breath 10 as a spell, so it has some ranged attack. Although in my opinion, if you're going to be in a range to cast that spell, I'm going to be charging most likely anyway. And you can buy other spells as options for it. I usually don't, because it's usually 1 turn spent maneuvering, 1 turn, and then the rest of the game it's fighting in hand-to-hand if possible. And so I feel like putting spells on it is a waste of points almost.
So his armor is what again?
5.
Man, there's a lot of stuff in this armor.
And it's nerve 17, 19.
Okay.
So it's a hard thing to kill. Now, I've had the great misfortune of having the thing get wavered from a lucky charge before. And man, does that suck. And Nimble saved me on that, thankfully. But it can be a true threat. I think a lot of people put their Titans in the middle of the board as like a pinpoint for their army. I use it as a flank. So because of its speed.
It has fly.
It has fly.
And how many points is it?
315. It's the most expensive unit in the army.
In the army, okay. Well, I've seen this model. Whether it's in the Warhammer, it was a Terrorgeist plus a Zombie Dragon. It's the same base thing, right?
And it's funny because
the head's different, though. I'm guessing.
Yes, there's a few things that are different with it. The arm and wing structure is different on the Dragon compared to the Terrorgeist a little bit, I believe, too. And
are they the same model kit?
It's made out of the same kit.
Okay.
I didn't have this model when I started this project. I had actually given it to a friend of mine who's a frequent opponent of mine, and then he already had it. He had a bunch of undead stuff, and so he gave it back to me.
Sure.
We tend to trade models pretty freely back and forth between the two of us. And he, but yeah, I got it all painted up and put in this army, and I fielded it a couple of times. I like it, but not like so much that I don't feel like it's a must-have. I don't feel like I have to include it in the army.
Have to include it. Yeah.
I don't feel that way about most things in most armies, though. I'm pretty much like I like to experiment with different army builds and try different things.
Well, if you're a good general of your army and you know the units, you should be able to field most anything and still be able to do okay.
Yep.
I would guess.
Yep.
Sometimes in some games there'll be units that you could be the best general in the world, and you're not going to win if you play with those units, and then it's. But I don't know. I don't get that impression with Kings of War. I think everything is pretty well, practiced and balanced out.
I think so too. Like I know Undead have online. There's a bit of a reputation that Undead are one of the more powerful armies in Kings of War.
Okay.
But everybody was saying that, and then one of the big tournaments happened, and then the Herd, which was like the weakest army according to the internet, won. And Undead, I don't think took top 10. So everyone then everybody started joking oh, buff Undead, they're so weak, and
nerf Herd, right?
Yeah, and so I think Mantic does a really good job with their balancing. They do annual updates in Clash of Kings where they adjust points and rules.
So tournaments. So how many tournaments are there going on with Kings of War?
A bunch.
And how many people are at these tournaments?
I don't know. I haven't been to any, but I think one of the ones I just heard about was 114 people or something.
Jeez, that's huge.
So they do have some big tournaments, but a lot of their tournaments are not that big. A lot of their tournaments are 12, 16 people.
And so what's the I guess the people? I don't know what you call them. The people who are playing at these tournaments. Are they pretty cool people, or?
From my understanding, everything I've seen, the community that I've
experienced, that's what I was looking for.
The community that I've experienced online has been seriously the nicest online community for any war game I've been in. I love the Mantic community. I think the people who play the game, most of them are just there to have fun. The only people I've seen them be unwelcoming to are the people who come in trying to break the game or just be jerks to other people, and those people tend to leave the community pretty quick. They get kind of driven out. Okay. It's not gatekeeping. It's just keeping the community pleasant.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, if you're
sure. Well, it's just a game,
Right.
At the end of the day,
we're here to have fun and play games, not to be a jerk. So
right.
Be a jerk.
At the end of the day, these are games, and these are built for people to. I don't know. For me, it's to kind of escape. It's almost like escapism. It's like reading a book. You read The Lord of the Rings or whatever, and you just kind of escape for a while. And nothing around you, in the real world, kind of fades away, and you're in this whatever's going on the table. And with all with everything that you've painted, I mean, I can just imagine it'd be easy to escape into your army.
Yeah.
The theme of your army.
I love fielding painted armies. I mean, that's what drew me to this hobby in the first place. Was even before I ever saw a White Dwarf magazine, I was a D&D player, and I got my hands on the 2nd edition battle system for D&D, and which was a war game system for Dungeons and Dragons. And I fell in love with the pictures in the book, showing these massive battles going on, and that wasn't even really rank and file. That was all just.
Right.
Models on, we're talking about old Rel Partha and Grenadier models. And but I fell in love with these battlefields, and just I want to do that. And I had no interest in historical games.
You're into the, you
I like the fantasy side of it.
Or the science fiction side.
Yep, I love that. I love being able to, I don't want to go back and retell the same old stories over and over again. I want to tell new stories.
Well, the thing about, and I like me, I love historical games.
Right.
I'm really big into them. But I have to say that a fantasy or a sci-fi universe, you can basically do what you want in it. The historical ones, I guess you call them the grognards, right? The old historical players like myself. We want things to be fairly close to history, and we want the units because that's how we kind of escape into that game. But in a fantasy setting or in a sci-fi setting, you can basically escape into any type of anybody's imagination is out there that can change.
Yep, I love it. I love these games. I love My buddy Lane, this guy I've been talking about, like play games a bunch. Like he comes over maybe once a week lately. We've been trying to get games in when the holidays aren't disrupting it completely. And like I said, friends in from out of town and stuff. I've been demoing this game for a while. I mean, funny, I only picked up this game like 10 months ago, and here I am demoing it to people to like try to get more people playing it. Especially a lot of our old Warhammer Fantasy crowd who gave up on wargaming after Fantasy died.
I loved Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah, same thing. Although
I loved it.
Being honest with myself, it's not as good a game as I remember it being.
I know.
My nostalgia colors it a lot.
I remember a lot of arguments about the rules and things.
Right. That's what I don't want. I don't like games that are just so open to interpretation or argument. I would rather just play a game and.
But rank and file, moving across the table and maneuvering, and I just
by far my favorite format.
I love those a lot more than I.
I'm like you in that regard. Like I like big war games more than I like small war games. Like, I'll play Apocalypse scale over like Kill Team scale any day.
Right.
Having said that, I've enjoyed Dead Zone for Mantic way more than I liked the new Kill Team. And the new Kill Team was a definite step in the right direction from the old Kill Team. Mm-hmm. But games were kind of just getting too fancy with themselves and trying to do weird things with the proprietary movement system they came up with. Whereas Dead Zone had a movement system that at the first time I read it I thought was garbage. Mm-hmm. And then I played it and saw how elegant it really is, and I've really enjoyed it.
Well, we'll have to feature some of that. We'll have to feature some of that on this channel in the future.
But anyway, getting too far from the field here. But like, I love these types of games. I love setting up a cool-looking board. I love these maneuvering games because it is outmaneuvering your opponent. King's War, in my opinion, is not a game that you're going to win when you create your army. And AOS, Age of Sigmar, feels like that kind of game that like. I've seen games that I feel are decided by what you put on the table rather than how you use the board. And that doesn't seem like a fun game to me. Like, if you put your army down and you already know you're going to lose, why did you play? Designing
your army with, the points and everything, I think is kind of fun.
Sure.
But it shouldn't be, like,
you
win armies, just by designing it.
Right, right. Like, it should, and then in this game in particular, like, it really feels like what happens on the board is very important. And yeah, dice are a factor. Dice are always going to be a factor. Crazy dice spikes happen here and there. Somebody rolls a double 1 or a double 6 the first time.
Right.
And hopefully when you play these games, you go into it with that attitude of it's fun still. I have had those games where I've rolled double 1s at the worst inopportune moment, and you got to sit back and laugh at it. You're like, oh great, well I guess you guys are going to fight to the bitter death here. I guess they're not going to break and run when I thought they were going to. And then I had my opponent turn around and do it right back at me the next turn. Should have killed me, and then snake eyes me right back. And we both laugh and like, I can't believe it just turned out this way. That is so dumb. But it's funny. Like you got to embrace it. Like those are the vagaries of battle, though, right? Like sometimes, a lot of times, your battle plan is not going to survive contact with the enemy.
Right. Okay, so this was a.
That's the Vampire Lord and Undead Dragon. We're going to go to the next Titan, which is a much smaller model, but on the same size base, and it's from a different game company that we haven't even touched on yet. So, with the model,
what's the name of it?
The Revenant King on the Undead Great Burrowing Worm.
Okay. All right. This is the Revenant King
on the
Undead Worm.
Great Burrowing Worm.
Great Burrowing
Worm. Not to be confused with the Revenant King on the Undead Great Flying Worm.
There's a
totally different creature.
There's a flying worm?
There's apparently a flying worm, too.
Did they even have a model?
No, so this was so funny because, as I said, when we got into Kings, Lane and I were playing a game. He brought his Kingdom of Men army that he had left over from Old Fantasy, which was actually using the old Lord of the Rings models, the Easterlings, and he was using his Kingdoms of Men in this. And I brought my Undead out on pieces of cardboard. But after the game, we were looking over the army list, and I saw this entry. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait. What? On a burrowing worm? I have this miniature! Like, it's from a different game completely, but I have a miniature for this. And this is the miniature from a game called Rune Wars that was put out by Fantasy Flight Games for a blip of time. And it was kind of their entry into the world of rank and file war games.
Okay.
And it was a weird combination of the rank and file game and X-Wing. It used like different movement trackers and stuff, kind of like X-Wing does for different units.
Did you like the game?
It was okay.
Okay.
I massively dislike the miniatures because they're made out of that soft rubbery plastic that a lot of D&D miniatures are made out of as well. That I just don't like the material. I don't like painting the material. I don't like working with the material. The spears bend too easy. The weapons bend too easy.
You did a good job painting this guy, though.
But I had the miniature, right? Because I had the core set. I had the miniature sitting in a box doing nothing. And so I broke it out and painted it up for this. And I was just thrilled with how it turned out for the paint job and everything. And I get to use him, and I take him occasionally. He usually dies, I use him as a flanking unit because he is speed 7 and he doesn't have shambling, so he gets to add the double. He's not nimble, but he does have Strider, which means he just goes through terrain like it's not there when he charges, and that's really good because it lets him go over like walls.
Okay, so this is the first time you've mentioned the Strider rule.
It's the only thing in my army that has it.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. That is, this guy's the only guy that has it, because the worm isn't actually like an undead thing, is it?
I mean, it's an undead great burrowing worm.
Oh, it is undead, isn't it? Okay. All right.
But it is brutal, which when you do cause damage in hand-to-hand, it counts as having 1 extra damage on the unit, basically. And then it's Crush 3 with 12 attacks.
Oh my gosh, Crush 3.
But it hits on 4s.
But Crush 3 is huge, isn't it?
Yes. It has Life Leech 1. It usually dies, like I said, because I usually throw him into the thick of fighting because that's how I play the game.
Right. You're aggressive.
I am. I'm an aggressive undead player. But man, I have fun with it. He's done really well in some things and not so great in others.
Well, I guess I'm looking forward to seeing him in your campaign because I'm sure I'll be meeting you in
the last time I took him was one of those double 1 incidents though. Lane took he was playing his Sylvankin and he took the Elf King on a dragon kindred, and I hit him in the front with the werewolves and I flanked him with that guy.
Wow.
And I did exactly his nerve and damage, and then Snake Eyes the roll. So that was cool. Not even on the reroll, I don't think. I think it was like the initial roll. Like,
so, do they have a model for the flying one?
I don't know. I know they have. They have a model for this.
They have a model for this. I'm pretty sure Mantic Games does,
right.
But the flying one, I didn't even know it existed, to be honest. Okay, so we're almost done.
Yep,
we have
a couple characters left.
We have 4 more characters left. So what are the ones we're going to move on to next?
So the Lich King is next, although it's a Lich Queen in my army.
Okay.
And this is another model that's going to come from Games Workshop again.
Okay. All right, this is a Lich Queen.
Yep.
And you said it's a... I don't know if I've seen this model.
So this is once again from Underworlds. This comes from
Underworlds.
And
I'm going to have to get Underworlds. I'm sorry.
She came out of one of the 2-player starters. I don't remember which one, but she's part of the Nighthaunt faction.
Okay, so she's not with
like
the vampires.
The Briar Queen or something.
She's not with the vampires.
No, different box altogether. But it's a really neat model.
I like it.
I'm actually doing a Night Stalker's army in Kings of War using all Nighthaunt models. But the Lich King out of the Undead has Fly and has the Phantasm keyword, so it seemed like an appropriate model for that.
Yes.
And I really love the miniature, so I wanted to use it.
Again with the roses.
Yep, and it fits the scenery on my other model, so it fits the theme of the army still, and the colors that I have going. So this model is speed 7 with Fly.
Okay.
Is an individual, is inspiring, and has regeneration 5+. Makes it kind of hardy with Fearless 14, that defense 5. In hand-to-hand, probably the best model in the army with 1 attack hitting on a 5. That's horrible. She's not a hand-to-hand fighter. But is a spellcaster.
Okay.
So the model comes with Surge 10.
So were those vampire spellcasters?
They can know some spells. I usually just give them Surge, if anything.
Okay. So what kind of... Okay, we're going to be talking about other spellcasters, but so far the only spellcasters were the vampires.
The White Kings. Revenant Kings. Can have Surge,
but they can't have anything else.
Right, and the one on the Great Burrowing Worm is the only one that can't have any spellcasting for some reason.
Okay, and then she's a spellcaster, and the vampires can be spellcasters.
Yes, they're okay spellcasters. She is the spellcaster.
She is the
best spellcaster in the army.
Okay.
If you give her heal, she has heal 6.
So the Lich Queen, she has Fly.
Yes.
Okay. So this is probably a really good model for that.
Yes.
Since she's
I love the model for it. Like I said, it has the Phantasm keyword, so it has that Phantasm ghostly appearance. And I have been playing with this model quite a bit lately in my army, and Surge 10 is just ridiculous.
Oh, that's crazy.
I mean, on an average roll, you're getting 5.
How many points is she?
155, so pretty spendy character.
She is kind of up
She's
there.
a spellcaster level 3, which makes a difference in the new class.
She's
of games.
inspiring too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, and defense 5 with regeneration 5 and a good fearless stat of 14. All around pretty good model. And like I said, not shambling, so if I need to get away, speed 14.
So I think when I watched some videos on painting the Night Haunt, that there was some fairly easy ways to paint them.
Yes, whenever I finish my Night Stalker, we'll showcase that army. It's a very different schemed army. It's very bright and dark at the same time. Because Nighthawks are kind of wild. But
I like this model, and I like the vampire models. And you're
well, and those Wraiths we showed earlier too. Those are also Nighthawk models. So the unit of Wraiths.
right, but they don't. But this came in your Underworld
That came in
box.
Underworlds. Yep.
And I just think that I guess they just
Oh,
decided
they're super dynamic.
they look really
poses.
cool.
Yep.
I like them. Okay, so this was the Lich Queen.
Yep.
What is the next one?
We'll do her apprentices, the 2 Necromancers I have for this army.
Okay. Okay, I recognize these models.
Okay.
Now, when I say I recognize them, these are from the Empire side for
Yes.
old Age of Sigmar, or even before then, like
Old Warhammer. Yep.
Old Warhammer.
They're the Empire Battle Wizards.
But the ghost coming out of that is something you added.
That's from the Spirit Host from the Undead.
But you added that. That's not part of the model.
Once again, I made these models and painted these models for my Undead Cities of Sigmar army for Age of Sigmar. So it came before I decided to put them over to Kings of War. And so they follow the heraldry of the army, and they're these corrupted wizards who have fallen into necromancy. And there's a magic item in Age of Sigmar in the Old Legion and Nagash book that was an hourglass.
Okay.
And so there's the spirit coming out of the top of the hourglass on the one model
I like it.
to show that he carried that artifact. But I want them to look a little different, like they're kind of rivals for their master's attention. And so they have the...
So talk about that a little bit. They're rivals. So they both work for the Queen of the Lich.
In this, they did. So my original, though, there was a vampire that they were working for.
Okay.
And I had actually converted the Saint Celestine and her 2 companions from 40k into vampires.
Okay.
For Age of Sigmar. And I had taken their wings off from them, and I had given Saint Celestine the wings off, the feathered wings from a Dark Eldar Scourge, and I'd given her associates the bat wings. And they were all vampires. It was the handmaidens and the head vampire. And I had a whole backstory of why they were the way they were. I had added ghostly flames from some of the undead models to the blade of St. Celestine's blade. But those miniatures, there's not really any sci-fi bits on them.
Right.
And the Sisters of Battle, if you take the backpacks off from them
Yeah.
and don't give them the guns, they look like plate mail.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so anyway, that was the original when I designed this army. That's what I was designing it around. But they work just well as the Lich Queen's apprentices here.
Well, I like that you created a story behind them, that they're competing with each other for probably more knowledge or something.
Right.
So they're not friends.
Right. They're
rivals. They're
yeah.
they're competing.
Yeah, well, they're an evil army. You don't have friends in an evil army. You have the one...
And she, the queen, the Lich Queen, or if that's...
Right, the Lich Queen.
She probably uses that to her advantage.
She promises immortality for one of them.
Right, only for one.
Right, only for one. Unfortunately, the guy with the ghost coming out of the hourglass hasn't seen the table yet, so he's fallen behind. He's going to need to get into some battles here. And,
okay.
Mostly because it's a little more fragile of a model. I don't want to put him on the tables frequently. Looks really good as a centerpiece, but not...
Well, that was a really good little addition, is putting that ghost coming out of that hourglass. It's really cool.
Yeah. And then there's one model left for the whole army, and I feel bad for him because he's probably never going to see the table because he's just the most useless model.
Okay, who's this?
But it's the Undead Army Standard Bearer.
Okay, so we'll be right back with the Undead Army Standard Bearer. Undead Army Standard Bearer, which is basically a skeleton standard bearer.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So as heroes go, probably the most lackluster hero you can find in any army is the Army Standard Bearer.
Okay.
They have crap for fighting. 1 attack hits on a 5.
Oh my gosh.
They have
because what else? How are you going to attack with your standard?
Right.
You know?
4 defense, 11 fearless leadership. That's it. But what he does have is 2 things going for him. 1, he's cheap. He's only 50 points.
Okay.
And 2, he's inspiring.
Okay.
And that's what the army standards are for. They're guys who are selected to hold the banner to keep the army from falling apart, to keep the army rallying, and living armies. And Undead, I see it as more of like a focal point of necromantic energies, knitting them back together and keeping them moving forward. But it was a fun model. It's a skeleton model from the GW skeleton kit, but put on with some of the better parts to make them look a little more like a hero.
There was a Forge World model with the White King. Do you remember that model? With the giant... standard's enormous.
I had that model, yeah.
But there's no...
My buddy Lane, I think, has it still painted. Like I painted it for him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But there's no way to fit him in here.
He could be that same role. Be the same model. So there's one other model I'm getting for this army that I ordered, and there's a character named Morgoth the Faceless, and he's a necromancer.
That sounds really menacing.
Yeah, right? Like, the guy doesn't have a face. You don't want to mess with him.
I wonder what you're going to do with that one.
But I have a miniature that I actually had somebody who does 3D printing on Etsy. I just got the email that it's shipped, and so I'm super excited. It's on its way.
Okay.
But it's a really the model looks like it was probably intended to be like a Lich for a D&D game, or maybe Vecna.
Okay.
Or maybe even a really toned down Nagash model, like a human-sized Nagash model.
Okay.
But it's very Lich looking. But I'm going to use him as my Morgoth the Faceless model.
Okay.
Because he's in a very dynamic pose as well. And one of Morgoth's special rules is called Unholy Levitation. And he can at the double and still make ranged attacks, which in this game means cast spells.
Okay.
And he's speed 10 with fly.
Oh my gosh. Is that the fastest in your game?
And he's an individual, which means he gets a free turn at the start of his turn, and he's nimble. So with a 20-inch movement, and then can cast spells at the end of that.
Wow. So he could nail some guy's artillery unit or something.
Right.
In the
He's
back.
also 230 points. So that hurts a little bit for a little dude. He also has Dread, which means enemies within 6 inches lose a point of nerve. And he also has Very Inspiring. So it's inspiring, but with a 9-inch range rather than a 6-inch range.
Okay.
So he's got some really good stuff. And he's got Surge 10, unbelievable. He has Drain Life 9, also unbelievable.
Wow.
So I want to try him out really bad. Like, he's one of the characters I want leading one of my armies in the campaign.
Okay.
When we do our campaign, we're doing preset lists. So you put a list on the board.
Oh,
and
really?
You can't change your list. And
you mean for the whole campaign? Or just for that game?
No, for the campaign. If you have turns, there'll be rules for changing things in your list.
Maybe we'll do a video on your campaign and how it works.
Unique units like Morgoth the Faceless, for instance, can only be in one of your armies because he's unique.
So you have multiple armies then.
Right, you'll have multiple armies on the map, so he can only lead one of your armies. Each of your unique characters can only be in one army. So,
okay.
And I think I might put a limit of one unique character per army as well. So you, with the exception, like there's some that have to play together or work well playing together. But I don't think most people in our group are going to worry about that much anyway. But like I said, you can't take a Morgoth in every one of your armies. Yeah. Only one army can be.
Sure,
can have it.
That would make sense.
But that is the extent of the Undead Army. That's everything, I believe.
I'm going to give a real quick video of the army one last time before I end the army showcase, and I'll be right back. All right, this is the army. All out, 4,015 points.
4,520 points.
Okay, 4,520 points. This is Lord of Chaos Productions.
Yep, Lord of Chaos Productions.
And this is all painted models done by Chris. He painted all of these, and he's Lord of Chaos Productions.
Yeah, I've been painting models for 32 years now.
I was going to ask you that. So
yeah. I started a long time ago in high school, which was a long time ago for me now. Yeah.
The last look of an army showcase, 4,500 points.
Hopefully we'll be seeing them on battle reports sometime soon.
And that's the other thing is, I've got to decide whether, I know that you have other painted armies, but your opponents probably want to play their own armies. So I'm not sure who else has painted armies.
Unfortunately, I'm one of the few people around here that actually completely paints armies.
Yeah, I know. But we're just scrolling through. I mean, what a fantastic army. You're practicing, you're enjoying it. I don't know, maybe take one of these to a tournament maybe somewhere.
Maybe. Unfortunately, we live in the middle of nowhere, so it's hard to get to these things.
It is. All right, this is Old Man Sarge signing off. I did an original video for Lord of Chaos probably 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe more.
Maybe more.
With a 40K game that was 40,000 points, 20,000 on each side.
20,000 per side, all the models painted by me, all the tables, terrain, everything painted by me. We did a giant apocalypse game. It was really insane and fun and mostly insane.
But what I'm really doing these videos for, in case anybody's curious, is just kind of documenting it. And maybe when we're old and gumming our food and sitting on the porch with our wheelchair, waving our cane at people passing by, driving too fast.
You meant to say older.
These videos I think would be kind of interesting just for nostalgia for ourselves to look at, but it also might inspire other people or to paint up their armies or watch our various videos.
That's the hope. I mean,
I don't expect a lot of views, and I'm not really that concerned about it, but I want to have every painted army that I run into showcased that I can think of anyway.
And I'll be honest, like I don't consider this army like an award-winning army or anything, but it is all painted, and it is painted to what I consider an above-average tabletop quality. And you know, I used to display paint pieces, but I don't really anymore. I'm more focused on army painting than display painting. And so I'm trying to get armies done. That just means painting a lot of models in as short a time as possible and still having them look good. Contrast paints were a wonderful addition to that from GW. Army Painter is putting their own competing line of that out later next year. I guess now next year is just a couple days away.
Right.
But in 2022, the speed painting kits from Army Painter are supposed to be coming out. They're supposed to be very akin to contrast paints. I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on some of those. But you know, and people ask, well, how do you get armies painted? It's like, well, just paint every day. Like, spend a little time every day, and you'll eventually
I'm trying
get
it.
done.
I'm trying it for a 40k Sisters of Battle army. I'm trying it for I'm trying to do the Northern Alliance for this game, Kings of War, and you actually painting their models. And I'm trying to do my own like Hail Caesar army that I can use in different games, as well as this one, Kingdoms of Men. You said I could use.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think honestly this year there's been 2 days this year I haven't painted, and
crazy.
I'm up to over 800 models finished this year.
Well, Chris, I love it. Lord of Chaos. He may have his own channel out at some point showcasing this. But if not, I'm going to keep showcasing his armies because I'm kind of one of those video voyeur persons.
You can find me on Instagram though under Lord of Chaos Productions, with the same funky spelling. And
can you spell it for
LORDOKAOS?
Okay, there you go.
Lord of Chaos Productions. You can find me on Instagram. I post pictures there almost daily. Sometimes I miss a day, but I'm always posting what I'm working on or things that have been finished. You can see some close-ups of some of this stuff that way.
All right. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to come in and
Anytime.
Do your showcase on your army. This is the Undead. What is it? Just
Undead. Yep.
Undead for Kings of War. There you go.